Surfen klicken und mehr wissen dank eurosport.de. Alles über Tennis und natürlich Fußball gibt's hier aus erster Hand. Ergebnisse in Echtzeit und Hintergrundinfos. Alles bei eurosport.de.
With CD cycling shoes.
Once again to Eurosport's live coverage of the 87th Giro d'Italia. This is the big one, stage 18, Class Tour Bormio 2000. Only 118 kilometers, but a fierce, fierce day. And how will this man fare? Yesterday, Russian Pavel Tonkov, the 35-year-old veteran, went away with about 30 kilometers to go, running into the finish of stage 17. And got the most well-deserved victory. For many, many years he's been suffering and not been at the top of his form, and yesterday he was allowed to go away by team leader Stefano Garzelli, who was comfortable where he was and enjoyed a day of victory. It comes so long after, 8 years after his victory in the Giro in 1996. He won stage 13 on that day to Pratanovoso and took the pink jersey, beating Olano into third, the favourite, into Milan. In 1998, riding for Mappa, he beat Marco Pantani on the way from Val Gardena to Pampiago. No mean feat in itself, with the legendary Italian climber at the top of his game. But he was finally defeated by Pantani on the run into Milan to finish second in that year's Giro. And back in 2002, riding for Lampre into Foggiara on stage 17, he escaped with the Mexican rider Cupio. He finally finished that Giro in 2002 in 5th place overall. Well, welcome to our live pictures here. You can see they have been racing for just over 1 hour. And this is the stage today. So many memories of past Giro. It is very, very hard indeed. Only 118 kilometers, but we have 3 climbs today. One second category climb at the Passo del Tonale. And then the big one, rising all the way up to 2,618 meters. If you're listening to us in the UK, that's 8,597 feet over the Passo di Gavia, the Cima Coppi. And they run down the other side of that, and then almost immediately a very small climb. When I say small climb, at La Motte, it's still at 1,425 meters, and all the way up to Bormio 2000, where in fact Gilberto Simoni won in 2000, but it has a very, very long history. This is make or break day. What is going to happen? Is Gilberto Simoni going to leave it to Cunego? Is he going to jump him? What is the story here with these two riders? And the press speculation has been extraordinary all day yesterday and today. They were talking about the parallels perhaps between the Ino-Le Mans situation. I'm not quite sure it's that far yet, but they're whipping something up about it. Well, thank you for joining me, David Harmon, today on stage 18. Next to me, as was yesterday, Sean Kelly. And Sean, it's the really big day today for everybody.
Yes, it's certainly going to be a very big day, and at the stage they're in this race, 3 weeks of the race almost through. It's going to test anybody out that's suffering a bit and not recovering. Those stages are really the most difficult stages of the Giro when they come at this moment. And as we see here in our On our shots at the moment, we have a lot of action at the moment. We have 20 riders who went away there at the 31 kilometre mark. Going away very early in the day, it's going to make it difficult for the Saeco team, because they've got to ride a bit on the front to control this, and a group of 20 riders, and nobody really of any danger in the general, of major danger. So, but again, it's always a bit difficult for the Saeco team when they have to start controlling the race so earlier on.
Well, you can see Fabian Wegman in the group there, second in that line, wearing the green jersey of the best climber in this year's race. And he helped Damiano Cunego and the Saeco boys so incredibly well a couple of days ago. And just wore himself out in the end, I think, but cemented some sort of lead over Cunego, and that's what he's trying to do today, just to make sure he can hang on to that green jersey all the way towards the end. Well, you'll also notice in this group one Alessandro Patacchi, not a man I'd expected to do an awful lot today, but he's there and he's giving it a go. There's a couple of sprinters, in fact, in the group. Also Daniel Schneider, the Swiss champion from Phonak. Rubens Bertogliati also in there. He's wearing the yellow, bright yellow strip of Sonia Deval, and he's been a very aggressive rider, and well up in the aggressive riders competition. So a group of very good riders, but not mountain goats, shall we say. Well, just a little bit of news from yesterday. If you were watching, you saw that there was a big crash after 60 kilometers or so, involving Jans Verrada and Luca Pagliarini from the Lampre squad. Until that time, in fact, it was 49 kilometers they were into the race. Until that time, Lampre had all their riders. Just a bit of a follow-up on that. Apparently, we couldn't tell you at the time because we really didn't know, but apparently they managed to hit what is described as a truck tyre, and we think it's probably, as Sean pointed out, it's probably just the tyre that's come adrift, that's delaminated from a truck on the way down the slopes, and left a large chunk of rubber with tread on it on the road, and they hit it at some speed. This was on the downhill. It was Verrada and Pagliarini were involved. Andrea Tonti was involved from Saeco. Valjevets from Phonak was also involved in that crash. Well, Verrada and Pagliarini were taken off to hospital for x-rays. Luckily, no broken bones, so that's good news for those two, but some very deep, nasty cuts to Pagliarini. You may have noticed as he was being stretchered away, or just before they put the neck brace on, he had a very nasty deep cut to the left-hand side of his neck, and there were 2 or 3 more, and I imagine that was either bouncing off rocks or being tangled up with chain sets, I would imagine. So they went off to hospital, and Jans Verrada and Pagliarini are okay. Well, we'll talk a little bit more about this stage when we come back from a short break, but just look at the weather, ponder upon it. We're going upwards, and here it's raining.
Scientific and cultural meeting among its initiatives. An international race for solar-powered vehicles taking place for the first time in Greece along the historic route joining Athens to ancient Olympia and Delphi. The Phaethon 2004 race for solar-powered cars from the 22nd to the 29th of May. Cultural Olympiad. Celebrate cultures.
Back then, live on stage 18 here in the Giro, and you can see it's raining very lightly down here. Not a great amount of rain, but remember, we're going upwards, and we're going up to a pass, the Passo di Gavia, which has a very famous record for having nasty, nasty weather. Looking down at your pink jersey group, and the rain jackets are on, and they're just tapping tempo there. Not really doing an awful lot. There's Igor Astaloa, the world road champion, who of course jumped ship from Cofidis to Lampre earlier this year, just in time for the Giro, in fact, and a couple of other races. And you can't really blame him. Cofidis all in disarray for a while, and Igor Astaloa joining them at the end of the last season. And really, they were pretty good to let him go, and managed to secure a deal with Lampre, and I'm sure they were very pleased to have his services. Well, let's just consider this day today. Long, hard, difficult day. We say it's only 118 kilometers, but as I say, we have the highest point of the race, and this is make or break time for Cunego or Simoni or Garzelli or Tonkov or Pelazzotti or anybody else who has any pretensions to victory. Let us just consider where they are. Cunego, of course, is 1 minute and 14 seconds ahead of fellow countryman Sergei Gontchar. Yaroslav Popovych, sorry, the other Ukrainian, should I say, Yaroslav Popovych at 2:22. Cunego's not Ukrainian. Of course he's not Ukrainian with a name like, he should be Kunegovich in that case. And Simoni fourth at 2:38. Bradley McGee has managed to stay well within the top 10 despite a 20-second penalty for allegedly hanging onto a car the other day on the climb up to the end of stage 16, and he was absolutely mortified at that and really angry. In fact, he was saying yesterday that he almost considered going home. He's never hung onto a car in his life, and he never will. And with typical Aussie battling words, he decided that it wasn't fair on the rest of his team, and he was going to stay. Volodymyr Belli in 6th place at 4 minutes and 20 seconds. Garzelli at 4:26. Cioni at 4:31. Pelazzotti at 5:31. The top 10's rounded out by the Slovenian champion Valjevec, who I'm very impressed with. He's had a very good Giro. He's a tough old bird. He's been down on the deck at least twice during this Giro, and he's got back up and managed to pedal his way back up to the top group and stay there. And he's had a very good race indeed, and I've been impressed with him this year. Well, you can see Fabian Wegmann on the front of that group. Let's just have a quick rundown about the best climbers competition for this Giro so far. And there he is, atop the table with 45 points. Damiano Cunego on 38. More concerned with keeping the pink jersey than winning that one, I should imagine. Alexander Moose on 27. Gilberto Simoni, 16. Nicky Aberzold, who we saw go away for a long loan break the other day, 15 points. Laverde on 14. And McGee on 13. And I've said it yesterday, I'll say it again, I'd never have expected to see McGee in a climbers competition, but all power to him. Saeco on the front, and the group of some 20 riders or so away. And Sean, I think you've got a handle on who in fact is ahead of the peloton.
Yes, well, we have 20 riders, as you said, and a lot of the teams, interesting, we have 2 riders from teams up there, but the breakaway is Bertognoli and Stranelgi from Saeco. We have one from Acquasaponi, Poppi, Neef, Milovic and Morini from Alezio, Mazzanti from Panaria, Pujaki from Dinardi, Nadus from Dominica Vacancia, Pataki of course from Fassa Bortola, Gilbert from FdJeux, Strauss and Wegman from Gerolsteiner, Rishi and Vila from Lampre, Bilecka and Simmons from Landbouwkrediet, Schneider from Fornac, Bertogliati and Lopez from Sagno Duval, and Masson from Vini Caldirola.
It is interesting, isn't it, that there are 2 Lampre riders in there. There are 2, just looking down the list, 2 Lampre riders, 2 riders from
Saeco.
Yep, 2 riders from Saeco, 2 riders from Landbouwkrediet, and
Yeah, Alessio.
Yeah, you have to wonder if they're... Yeah, 2 from Alessio, of course, yeah. Mihailovic and Morini, and you have to wonder if they're doing the same as Saeco did the other day, making sure they've got at least 2 men up there to aid in any catapulting attack up the big mountain. And I think everybody will be a bit nervous this morning. I would be. I don't know about you, Sean.
Well, I think some of the riders in this break are probably very nervous, you know, wouldn't be the best in the climbs, and some of them maybe to get up the road and be a help to their teammates later on. Other ones want to get away up the road before the climbing starts and to get ahead and maybe, you know, start the climb with a number of minutes ahead. That would always be an advantage, and you know, Pataki, for example, I think that would be his idea, because if he starts back in the bunch and he starts losing ground out of the bunch, well then he's a long ways to go, where if he can can go into the climbs and he has a number of minutes ahead, well, that's the advantage for him, and it'll make his day a bit easier, because if there was a lot of battling in the first climb here, and he was out the rear in the gruppetto, as they say, well, the time there is always a danger for those climbers, and I think he would be concerned about that. So I think out of these 20 riders, there's a lot of them going up the road with different ideas in their mind.
Well, having said that, with 20 riders all with slightly different agendas up the road, Saeco on the front, as you'd expect. Nothing really jumping around at the moment, and you wouldn't expect it to. Look at that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Fassa riders riding at the head of the peloton. Well, that's interesting. Not quite sure what it means, but it's interesting anyway. Okay then, Sean, come on, cards on the table. It really is the day today. And we've had all this press speculation about Cunego and Simoni. And do you think there really are the parallels with Ino and Le Monde? I mean, you rode with both of those men, and you saw that situation firsthand. Are there the same sort of parallels, or are the press just looking for a story here?
Yeah, so I think it's a story, really. There's a bit to go yet. I think we have to wait until today's and tomorrow's stages are through to see if we start to compare that situation. But reading through the papers, and Simoni is talking about not attacking the race leader Cunego, but I'd be a bit concerned about that, because I think Simoni is hoping that there will be a lot of attacks today to make the race difficult, because he seems to be getting better as this race went on, and he said he feels very good. So I think he'll be hoping that some of the riders down the classement, the general classement, will go on the attack today, because he cannot make the attack himself. But if somebody else who's further down the classement go into the attack, well, then he's the man who's got to follow, and that will be the perfect situation for him. And I reckon he's hoping that will happen today.
Well, the language in the papers from Cunego and Simoni has been shifting quite dramatically in the last few days. Damiano Cunego yesterday was saying, well, there's a pact between us. We're going to race our own races, but we're not going to be racing against each other. Tactfully avoiding the question of who was the team leader. Well, that's all very well until there's only two men in a straight fight, and then you've got to race each other. It doesn't, there's no real choice in that, whereas Simoni was saying to us that he wants to win the Giro, and if he has to do it with Damiano or without him, he doesn't really care. Not sure how he's going to do it yet, but he hasn't given up hope. Cunego also said, hasn't the Giro isn't over, so the language has been subtly changing. And we'll just have to see what happens today. I think they all woke up pretty nervous this morning, and they won't have liked to get up and see that it was raining. Just to fill you in on the weather at the top of the Gavia, as we see Alessandro Petacchi just dropping off the back of that lead 20, unsurprisingly. It was, there has been a lot of snow over the Gavia, and it's not yet open to public motorized transport, but they have opened it specially for this race. They've been keeping it clear with snow plows. There hasn't been an awful lot, although it did snow last night. It's not snowed today, but it snowed on the Gavia last night, and it's very, very dark overhead, so watch out for bad weather. We'll have to see what happens.
Ultra-high performance from racetracks to your car. Formula technology. Kumho.
From the 10th to the 13th of June 2004, we'll elect our deputies to the European Parliament. Their decisions are our decisions. European laws affect our daily lives, our well-being and our security. Act for your future. Vote.
The world's fastest tap dancer, under 12. The world's fastest motorcycle race, below zero. The world's fastest bird, underwater. And now the world's fastest office color printer, under €1,000. The Xerox Phaser 8400, 24 prints a minute in vivid Xerox color and crisp black and white, all for under €1,000. The world's fastest snack in under a second.
Come on.
To be the best, you must strive for perfection. And use every opportunity to get better. Kia. Quality comes from that dedication.
Well, that's a lovely shot of a lonely Alessandro Petacchi, who's now some 15 seconds behind this lead group, which is now down to 19, of course. They've got a lead approaching nearly 3 minutes at the moment. You can see the road is wet. It's been slightly drizzling. And the higher we get, the more likely that is to turn to something other than rain. Well, start running your books now and see how big the gap gets from this group to Petacchi. I hope you're all sitting there placing time and money bets on how fast he goes backwards. Let's just go back to yesterday's stage. Great win for Pavel Tonkov. I was very, very happy for him. He became a sort of Giro superstar back in the mid to late 90s and has had a really tough time, hasn't he, Sean, over the last few years?
Yes, he certainly has. He had a problem, of course, with his back. He suffered a lot of problems for some years. And he was saying just, last year that he had, he had a lot of problems. In the end, he had to go for an operation. And after the operation, he just started training again, and then there was a number of teams called him up and asked him would he be interested in continuing, because he thought at the moment when he went for the operation that was the end of his career, and he said it was in his head that that it was over. But when the interest started coming in again, he started getting out on his bike more, and he signed a 1-year contract. And he said after yesterday's stage, when you get a win like this in the Giro, he said it's it all comes back to you and it makes it all worthwhile.
Well, he managed to work himself back up to 15th overall with that victory yesterday. He could have gone a bit higher, didn't quite make enough of a gap over everybody else. The person who dropped right the way back down was Figueras from the Ceramica Panneria squad. He lost over 8 minutes on the group containing Cunego, which came in some 3 minutes after Tonkov. And in fact, he'd had a pretty bad night the night before, not that we knew it. But he had another bad night last night, and he has pulled from the race. So Figueras not starting this morning. And poor little Emanuele Sella will be left to do it all by himself. He's got Chipio, the Mexican, with him. Now, here we are. This is the top. Look at this. It's lots of snow around, but not looking too bad on the road at the moment. This is the top of the Gavia. Funnily enough, if you're looking at this, if you want to have a look at what the Gavia used to be like, and even as late as 1998 when Andy Hampsten made his legendary break over the top with Eric Breukink with him. If you remember that, it was snowing and it was just coming down his sheets, like Christmas, coming down his sheets. I've got fantastic memories of seeing pictures of Hampsten coming down the descent from the Gavia and going into the wind, and the snow just covering him from head to foot. And if you want to see a little of what has been going on in those areas, you can get there. There are webcams to look into the Alpine and Dolomite region to see what the weather's like. You can see all around it. In fact, a little bit further up from the Gavia, the Stelvio, it's completely shrouded in fog and very nasty indeed. So that's only 100 meters higher than the Gavia we're going over today, so they're looking a little bit lucky at the moment. But even back in 1998, when Hampsten was on the climb and the descent, it was a dirt road. It was resurfaced again in 97, and since then an awful lot's been done to it, but it was still partly a dirt road way back then. And if you want to see some pictures I stumbled across yesterday of what it was like back in the mid-70s and early 80s, and you'd have thought it might have been a paved road by then, well, think again. There's some old pictures going up of the Gavia. 2 cycle tourists who took pictures at all the relevant spots showing the gradient and so on, and that is www.paloalto, Alto, A-L-T-O, bicycles.com. So some American tourists going over the top, and even 25, 30 years ago it was a dirt road and a lot nastier than it is now. Well, it's not looking too bad at the top, Sean. We have to cross fingers though, because there's been a lot of low cloud, hasn't there, up here?
Yes, there is a lot of cloud hanging about, and as we see the riders there, we could see that the road was wet, and some of them were, you know, putting on a lot of them the longer sleeves, but it seems to be a bit drier there, and in the mountain region sometimes, you know, you're going over a mountain and it can be quite wet. The road is wet, but you go down the other side and it dries off very quickly, and it can be, you know, much better conditions, much better weather-wise in 15-20 kilometers, and as we see there, you know, the bit of snow on the top, of course we were expecting that. As we see here, the road is still wet, but I think later on the road seems to be drier, so that would be better for the riders, and if it's dry, it's better for the riders, because you don't get wet, and you know, the cold, of course, they will, when they get to the top, they will put on their raincoats and put a bit of newspaper under their jerseys for the descent, but when it's dry, it's the better conditions.
Well, it's not just the going up of the Gavia that's difficult, it's a wicked descent as well. And they really have to watch themselves. And everybody's been waiting for today to see what's going to happen. Nobody's going to launch an attack yet.
Malla rosa, donde vienen todos los grandes de esa clasificación general que vamos a repasar en un instante. Esa clasificación general que no registra cambios desde el día de ayer y que sigue comandada por el veneciano del equipo Saeco, ya con un tiempo de 76